What did you need?
Lighter.
Oh, okay. Here, take this one. Hi, everyone. Welcome to another show of Highbrow Live.
Highbrow Live.
We are flying again by the seat of our pants. I know, you can throw these all away. That's a trash can over there. I brought one out.
Oh.
And so it already has...
Well,
yeah, you can use that. This guy. All right.
this is my first one.
We have such a show today. I'm so excited to go over this. So, sorry, let me move my mic in a little bit.
Sorry, just
Saagar and Krystal were on... Oh, sorry, I forgot our... Happy 420, New York. And everyone on the East Coast. Hopefully, you guys are getting your cannabis prophylactic coronavirus medication. So, I saw that Krystal Ball and Saagar Enjeti were on the Joe Rogan Experience, and it was great.
And who?
Saagar Enjeti, her co-host. So they're both. Well, actually, they'll explain it, and so they explain a lot about like kind of their background and their purpose for their show, and it explained really a lot about why people even get their news from YouTube. To begin with, compared to like mainstream media.
Yes. Like I stopped watching mainstream media.
So let's take a look at this clip.
I thought let's do a left-right show.
Okay, right here.
Left, right?
No, well, this clip first.
Here we go. We're rolling. What's up? Good to see you guys.
Good to see you too. Thanks for having us.
It's always weird to meet somebody when you watch a lot of their YouTube content or TV content. And then you're like, you're real. And I could touch your hands.
That's how I feel about you, man.
You know, we all feel about each other that way.
Right.
It's very odd.
It is a strange dynamic.
You get to. I love you guys.
Oh,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, same. We feel the same.
For sure.
You guys are honest. I mean, we were talking about that earlier. Like, it's so rare that someone is just calling it like it is, like what you see. And obviously, you guys don't agree on everything, and no one does. But right, we all have varying opinions. But you say what you feel, and that is so valuable today. It's so unusual. It's just such a weird partisan time.
You know, and I think honesty, and I think what Joe Rogan and what even like the stars that you see with longevity on these streaming platforms like Pewdiepie and now these guys, the rising.
They can't pin their political whatever.
Well, no, but
they
even
just say it the way it is.
Just being honest, I think people regard as a higher form of like of genuineness than just the stories they spin, and that's really
no one wants to see all the damn filters.
Right,
No one
and so-
wants to hear all the filters either.
yeah. Joe Rogan before this was just known as like the Fear Factor guy, and he doesn't really specialize in anything.
I like watching him.
Right, but his honest approach to like interviews, and even though it's like 3 hours long, and they talk about like just literally anything, people like that engagement more than the news.
It's more real. Like
Yeah.
I said, it's not all filtered. It's not all like already edited. To like.
Yeah, so let's keep going with this clip.
This is a weird partisan time. Like, it's never been harder to actually just do that thing. And I can't say, we don't get it right all the time. But the whole idea was to try to have this conversation between kind of the new left and the new right that wasn't happening anywhere in a way that was valuing people's humanity, that was trying to deal in the land of the honest, not cheerleading a team or the other, but actually trying to like be straightforward about what we think and evaluating the facts as we find them. And I have to say, like, you've somewhat created that space where that can happen. So I think we're in part indebted to you.
It's absolutely. And
Yeah, so when they say like they're indebted to Joe Rogan for creating that space, I think what they mean was
He started doing this kind of.
well, for a long time, news and interview shows like this in general have just been dominated by this format of short interviews. Like you get like 10 minutes and then like you have to go to a commercial break. Like think of like
And they give them the questions beforehand and
Right.
stuff. It's
And
like
so, yeah, I
all
think-
scripted, very.
Yeah, that entire format was like that. Like any late night show, it was going to be that type of format. And so what Joe Rogan did was his proof of concept was like, oh, people are willing to listen to long form interviews. Like you don't have to cut it so short because we assume people's attention spans were shrinking. And so I think him proving that concept really gave a lot of other people the confidence to just be honest. And it's like, that's what people will respond to, even though it's long. Like these conversations aren't happening.
Honest, they're not. they're also kind of explain things in ways that nobody else is trying to explain.
Or even ask the questions that no one's asking.
It's like,
Yeah.
I feel like whenever I used to ask certain questions that I hear or see now on YouTube or them doing, it's like I was always told like, oh, don't ask those kinds of questions, or that's not relevant here, or
Yeah.
that's not. And I'm like, wait, but it is, because it made me want to ask that question. So there is some relevance, you know.
Well,
and it's
yeah, so they're going to go into that right now. So let's keep going.
Absolutely. And it's crazy. I think the reason it works is because we both kind of came up in quasi-traditional background, right? Like Krystal came from the MSNBC world. Like I was a White House correspondent. Like I worked with a lot of these traditional reporters, and like, I would do Fox News and all these other things. And it's always so frustrating.
he
when
can't
you're on
get away
TV.
from the suit.
You get 3.5 minutes to talk, right? Like I once did a segment on, nationalism, which was 2.5 minutes with 3 people on a panel. Like how are you supposed to get your point across?
Yeah. So, right. So
3 people with 2.5 minutes.
and so, yeah, I think
In a minute each.
what surprised me was I've been watching The Rising or these two for at least half a year now. And it never occurred to me that they were different politically, because I found their engagement so, like,
Refreshingly not like just all out war.
well, I mean, I think what that goes to show is like the left and the right have more in common than they think. And seeing Saagar, who is admittedly on the right, who comes from like a White House background, and then Krystal, who's on the left, who comes from like an MSNBC reporting background, seeing them be able to engage politics in a way that's actually constructive is refreshing. And it's like, oh,
Finding the common goals.
it doesn't
and,
have
like,
to be
getting-
so like political and aggressive. Like you guys can
That's what I'm
actually.
saying. Like all out war. It's
Right.
like a game. Like someone has to win and someone has to lose.
But the thing is, based on their discussion, I didn't realize that they were separate in terms of like ideology and like party.
Well, even Joe, no one knows what his
which is-
actual stance is, because it's like, wait, he's
Right.
kind of right. No, wait, he's kind of concerned.
No, but that's
Oh,
the point. It's like you can
who
have
cares?
engagement that's not so aggressive and destructive. Like you can be like civil towards each other.
without the label of, oh,
Yeah, you're just
Republican,
that.
You're a Democrat,
Yeah.
or you're a whatever. And I'm like, why? That doesn't even begin to cover all the bases of what a Republican might think or want.
Yes,
And yet they just go with it. I guess it's almost like
because you're not
the
you're
Christians
not
are like,
actually
he held the Bible, so let's vote for him. It's like,
because you're not
Go read
trying
about it.
because you're not trying to. This table keeps hitting the mic stand. You're not trying to have a discussion. You're trying to win an argument. And so that's what these guys are showing, is that
You don't have
they can
to.
have a discussion.
yes.
Yeah.
When you're doing that and you see like, so you can make an entire career in DC just sticking to the party line no matter what these people believe, and you just spit out the talkers that they literally send you. They will send you talking points. They just say over
What
and
is
over
that
again.
like? Pull that
yeah, go
sucker.
ahead.
Pull the sucker
Oh,
out.
for
What
sure.
is that
Inside
like?
notes on
What are the talking? Like you get a sheet.
Yeah,
We would like
you get an
you to
email.
discuss what
Message of the day. Here's the message of the day. Here are your talking points. Top line. Then you go and you turn on
the
Fox News.
agenda?
You can hear it come out of their voice. You turn
Literally
on-
word for word.
Turn on MSNBC. You can hear it word for word from the Biden campaign to their surrogates. It's all planned, man. Like it's all from straight. Nobody actually thinks for themselves. And that, when we came together, like when we were hosting the show, that's what set us apart. I mean, I think that's why it's caught on.
What's the incentive? Like, is it the incentive access?
Money.
But
Yeah.
I mean, for you to stay with the party line with
Oh,
whatever.
it's a lot safer. I mean, it's not easy to sort of be out there on your own, and I don't want to paint just sort of trying to be honest as a more noble act than it actually is. But it's very safe if you're within the party structure, if you're saying the things that they want you to say. There's a whole system set up for that. There's a career system set up for that. There's a system of protection. So you're allowed to be dramatically wrong on things like the Iraq War or things like the financial crisis if you're wrong in the approved ways, right?
So what they're basically outlining is the reason why journalism is the way that it is today is because they get talking points, and you can make an entire career of just following the talking points because of how political media has become and because of like the donors who are in that game.
Yeah, it's progressively gotten worse.
Right. And
Media
so-
it's like now you can tell their points and almost guess their narrative.
Well, yeah,
that they're gonna spin. It's like, you've been doing this for how long?
Saagar worked in the White House, and I don't know if I included this in because this whole segment is like 2.5 hours long. And Saagar was saying like he can literally predict like the questions that were going to come because of how just because of how the news has become this whole systematic way of delivering talking points.
I call it narrative or rhetoric that they're pushing, but I'm like, it's come so far whereas I don't even know if they understand how it originated.
Well,
It's like copy pasting. It's like has lost. I feel it's like playing telephone.
well, at this point, it's like
But it's predictable.
people don't even care how it's originated. They're just looking for something else. And that's really where the success of their show comes from, is that they're having the discussion that no one else is doing because everyone else is sticking to a script.
They're providing a different option.
Yeah.
That's
If you're wrong in the non-approved ways, then you can get destroyed, canceled, all of those things. So it's a
Fired.
lot safer to stay within the bounds. And look, like we're living that in real time right now.
Oh my God.
I mean, it's never been just with how fraught, you have pandemic where people are dying, you have Great Depression, so it's like the Spanish flu and the Great Depression, and then you layer on top of that like all the chaos of the 60s. The lines have never been more drawn, at least in the time that we've been doing the show, as they are right now. And so it's not an easy dynamic to navigate because most of the country is just completely coming apart.
Yeah, and picking up, you're like, why do you do it? If you do it, you hop on establishment campaign to establishment campaign cycle's over, you go work at a think tank, which is all your former buddies from the campaign. Then you go and you do the talking points. You will always have a job. You will never suffer. You'll never, even if nobody likes what you have to say, even if Republican voters or Democratic voters have rejected your message, 6 out of 7 popular vote elections, doesn't matter because the money is there. And the people who have the money have an interest in propping up that infrastructure. So when you get your talking points, you know that if you say them, you're in X's good graces. And then that person has to hire you. They'll throw you a consulting contract. They'll throw you this. They'll put your name
like a
forward
union.
whenever it's time to.
Well,
It reminds me of almost like, they joined a union, except there's no real union. But somehow they'll protect you.
but what this reminds me of is like over the last, like, I don't know, 20 years maybe, we've seen the journalism industry really take a hit because of like newspapers and magazines. Like they just weren't being sold as much anymore. And so a lot of like Washington Post got bought by like Jeff Bezos. Like a lot of these smaller or even, big newspaper chains were being acquired. And so I think what happened was during this time, the best way for journalists to make money was to stick to political journalism, which already had this established way of paying their people as long as they stick to talking points. Which is basically, it's like if the military industrial complex funds like a mainstream media outlet and that mainstream media outlet just has pro-war talking points, then you can make money as a journalist by just keeping to the pro-war talking points.
So you made me think of something really interesting of how news, they couldn't make money. And I was like, whoa. News was supposed to be free, shared information that the population has a right to. Like that's what news was originally. But I get the money thing because they
still have to
used
pay the
sell
reporters.
Ads. Yes. When people weren't looking up, and I think it wasn't the ads that the people were looking for, but now starting to pay for the entertainment value of the news, then something shifted. And also I think the people realizing that the corporations realizing putting their money in there didn't do as well as if they put the money in lobbyists. Like,
I'm just saying, as a reporter, your only option if you want to make it in the media industry is to basically do political news and go with their talking points.
Yeah, that's the most secure. That's what I'm saying. It's almost got unionized by the policies.
It's basically unionized by the donors, by the people who donate to
Yeah,
the
and
news.
so there's that protective measure.
Okay, let's keep going. We only got 46 seconds left on this clip.
Staff up and administration. That's how the system of the grift in the city actually works, and that's how they keep dissenting voices in their own party down. Because how do you even get on TV, or how do you even become an authoritative voice in your party? You need credentials, right? Everything is credentialism. Well, how do you get those credentials? They control who enters the programs, and they control who they push. They control who they push forward. And so that's how they try to keep people who have dissenting opinions out. And it's like we said, it's because of the space that you opened up, where Nobody knew that somebody wanted to listen to a guy talk about chimps for 3 hours. And that millions of people would do that.
Did you know that?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if you did that.
No.
And like that happened. That created a space where it's like, no. There's a lot of people who are fed up with this shit.
Well, it's true. It's
Let us stop and pause
uh-huh.
and take in the information and actually think about it.
Well, the thing is,
Everything else is just like they're just giving you stuff. This is how you should think. This is how, you know what I mean?
yeah,
Like,
I mean, and them keeping the dissenting voices out really is proving to be their downfall, because now people who are looking for those opinions, now
Yeah.
they know they can't get it from the news. They have to go to like YouTube.
Because it's like, am I crazy? Oh no, I found somebody else who's willing to think about this for a while and like
Well, even
express things that maybe I was thinking that. It's like people feel almost gaslit. Like, how come I'm not getting the opinions that I'm creating?
no, but even if you
Even.
don't know what the opinions are, you still know something's wrong. And if you feel like the
Yes.
news isn't explaining it, and then all of a sudden these guys on YouTube are having like an honest discussion about it, and you're like, oh, that explains it much better. Like that's proving to be the weakness of mainstream media, is that they're just not explaining stuff well.
Well, yeah, and people don't want to just accept things anymore because
Yeah.
it has been proven wrong. So their skepticism is now that's good. That's a good thing that we're
Right.
experiencing.
And so I have a short clip on them explaining to Joe Rogan what the point of the show is, and it was to bring like the left and the right together to have a discussion. But let's see what they say.
Wait, how long has The Rising been a show?
Well, let me answer that after this clip.
I thought, let's do a left-right show in a way that no one has done before, where normally the consensus, the sort of left-right consensus is like this: we're all moderates, we're all corporatists, we believe in unity, we believe in like low taxes, we believe in free trade deals.
Oh, is that what a
That's the
centrist-
in war
Sorry.
I guess.
sorts of things. That's the sort of standard bipartisan consensus that you're allowed to have. So we thought, what if we did it in a different left-right dynamic where we actually have more overlap on some of these economic issues, and the dissent is around more of the cultural issues, and what does that look like? Because that's actually more representative of where the two parties are headed.
Right.
If you look at where young people are, it's also more representative of where more Americans are.
But the ethos of the show, Krystal actually said this, I think, to the Times, was what if we hated each other less and the elites more? And I think that's what
It's
the
a
show
little
is about.
simplistic, but that's
No,
kind of how we boil it down.
There you go.
Well, yeah, be more efficient with our energies.
Yes.
Like, why fight the fake enemy when we now recognize what the real enemy is?
Oh my God. I mean, that's the perfect segue into a segment, which is basically the political elites want division. And so let's take a look at
Don't come after their houses. Go after your own houses.
Yeah, and it's like
over there. Like, go 2 streets over.
yeah, you have to ask, like, so one, it's like, why are we more divided than ever? And it's like, oh, if they actually want it and they plan for it, it makes a lot more sense. And so they cover this on the show. And so let's take a look at them talking about division.
And this is something Matt Taibbi, who's one of the
Love
people we
that
had,
guy.
who's a great guy. You
Love
had him
him
on
to
here.
death.
He's fantastic.
He's amazing.
Wrote this great book, Hate Inc. And his thesis is essentially that once the Cold War ended and we didn't have Russia to be the bad guy, that the new ratings innovation was to make each other the bad guys. And what does that do? First of all, it's great for ratings because you got an easy villain. On Fox, it's people like me. On MSNBC, it's people like Saagar, right? It's easy villains, easy ratings. You can find stories all day long that support that narrative, no problem. But it also saves any sort of accountability from the people that are in power. Because if, people who are out there in the country, if the voters are the problem, if they are bad, if they are evil, if they are deplorable, then it's not the fault of the people in power that things are going wrong. It's not their fault that these terrible, evil, sexist, racist, horrible people voted the wrong way. It's those people's fault. And so it saves them from ever having to do any self-reflection or make any adjustments in what they're doing. And I think it's a big part of why we are where we are.
Yeah.
So what she's saying is that the division is good for them because instead of being the people, like the politicians in power, instead of being accountable for how they made America, they get to blame the voters on the other side for voting the wrong way.
Well, it's also it's been so many generations that they quite literally can say, well, I didn't do it. This is what I inherited. And it's like, okay, but now we all say there must be changes. So being uncomfortable and then making changes is what I think a lot of people are like.
But we need to shift the blame from each other to the actual issue.
Yeah, how could we blame each other? We're not the ones with the power. Like, we weren't the ones unless we like get them out somehow. And that's why I'm like, if we can prove and we all vote, and that's why I was like, if people understand the popular vote and the electoral and breaking down the systems that still like those things that are like crooked, then we can prove even further what needs to be done.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, let's keep going.
And that's just such a huge part of the show, which is just trying to draw compassion for people, trying to understand what motivates 65 million, I don't know what the number is, I think it's 60 something million, to pull the lever for Trump. What happened there, right? And that's just something that the media has not spent any introspection trying to understand what would compel a person to do that. What would compel a person to vote for a Bernie Sanders? They're like, oh, Bernie bros, it's all white. I mean, if you look at the data, which we talked about on our show constantly, it's just absolutely false. And it's in that way that you can begin to understand and actually even respond, right? And that's actually the thing I love the most about the show is sometimes I have friends, like on the right, and they'll say something about the left, like the left thinks this. They'll be like, no, man, like I have a left co-host, and like that's not what she says. Her response is X, Y, and Z. I'm sure the same thing happens with Krystal.
So,
yeah, you have to actually have discourse with people whose opinions aren't like yours.
But
because then you can see that there actually are solutions that you would both vote for and say, yes, that's a good thing. Let's put our energies to move in that way.
Yeah, and it really goes to show how misunderstood the Trump voters are, because I feel like Joe Biden's whole campaign is I'm not Trump, not actually I understand why you voted for Trump.
Yeah, it's like, yeah.
And isn't that an
You
issue?
should ask why Trump? What happened?
Right.
That we went from like.
And so his whole campaign of I'll get us back to before Trump is almost like you're so out of touch.
Like Trump's
you
Make
don't...
America Great Again thing. You're sounding just like him. It's like, what does that mean?
Right. And so it's like Saagar's right. Like there's no actual attempt to understand what the voters feel, either by the Democrats or by the media, because they're framing them as like these sexist, racist, like people who are just angry that Obama was in power for 8 years. When really it's like, no, it's more nuanced than that, and you're not really attempting to understand it all. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, let's keep going.
Which is that, as you said, with Twitter, condensing our rhetoric and our politics to 280 characters and trying to condense hyper complex and multifaceted ideas and multifaceted discussions and deep conversations down to that level helps nobody. And actually, all it does is help split people apart for a pretty explicit reason, which is that part of the things that we talk about on the show is the reason why the elites, the cultural elites, right and left, kind of want everybody split. It's because they don't want people to have the uncomfortable conversation around how the economy is structured. They don't, every day that we talk, we have some, cultural debate in the country, is every day that we're not talking about how many million people in this country are unemployed right now, about the political choice, and something I talk a lot on the show about, to allow people to be forced off their payroll and to go on to unemployment, to allow businesses to fail, to allow people to suffer, when we have the explicit choice of allowing them to keep their payroll. I mean, this is something we've been focused on so much, because the implications of that, when you're also making the explicit choice in order to, cap the amount of money that goes to a small business program, when you're doing, big checks in order to corporations or, to the airlines, which are firing people anyway, despite the fact that they got like $50 billion. You don't have a conversation about that. That, they will never want to have that one because they want people to hate each other more.
Yeah.
Yeah, so what he's basically saying is like, if you can make people hate each other, they'll never have the uncomfortable decision on how to actually make things better because they're distracted. So there's more to it. So well, let's take a look at the clip and then we'll talk about it.
What happened in New York City was he's letting these people loot.
Yep.
He's telling the cops to stand down. So these businesses...
It's like redlining.
He's talking about the mayor de Blasio. He's allowing the city to be looted. But no, I don't know what redlining is.
Redlining all over again. It's where, every city has a map of all their zones, all their areas. They know where everything is. It's not like they don't, things were mapped out, and they would redline districts that were predominantly like poor or minorities or whatever, and they wouldn't. So if you were in that zone, you would have a harder time getting bank loans, and so they also send police know these zones really well and where they should go in, where there's like hot zones.
Well, they're looting the rich parts of New York, though. So let's keep going with this clip because he's going to talk about it right now.
That are all supporting the mayor, supporting the with taxes, supporting the police officers. They're watching their businesses get smashed and looted. Fifth Avenue is destroyed.
Yeah.
Sixth Avenue destroyed. Hundreds and hundreds of buildings with smashed windows and all their products gone.
And this
but then you also see like, police SUVs driving into protesters and,
Yes.
tear gassing indiscriminately. So to me, it's not a question of
there's a big difference.
harder or more aggressive policing. It's the tactics that make no sense.
Here's where I disagree. Protesters should be allowed to protest.
Right.
There's a giant difference between what those people are doing when they're saying, this is outrageous, we need change, we need a radical overhaul of the system because there's too many corrupt cops. Let those people do what they're doing. But they're not looting.
See,
the looters are different people.
This has been the hardest thing for Krystal and I to cover. Like, it's funny because we were coming on here and we were like, and we know all the attention is, and it's like this. There is nothing else where the battle lines are so drawn. Where, frankly, there's probably the biggest difference in our philosophy on this. Because I agree with you, Joe. I mean, I think, and I've told this to Krystal, which is that the beacon was sent out when that Minneapolis mayor let that Target go. And they let those affordable housing complexes burn, and they let the policing burn. That was it. And it was just all across the city. And this was an intentional choice. This was out of political correctness. They're like, we don't want to deploy the police because that would seem like we're impugning upon these protesters, and and they allowed this Target and it just went and it caught fire. And that's why, like, and as he said, look, if people should be able to protest in this country. And if they're a piece of shit cops who kick them in the face, I've seen terrible videos, some of these things, some of the things that they're doing, awful. But you can't allow looting. You can't allow these businesses. I mean, and this is the thing I want to emphasize. I mean, people are like, it's just property. And sometimes it's corporate property. But sometimes this is a whole guy's life. You think that guy has insurance?
But here's the thing, and where there's such hypocrisy, not from Saagar, who's been consistent on this, but from the right in general, is like the response to coronavirus lit 40% of small businesses on fire.
Yep.
They didn't give a fuck.
Right.
They didn't care. It's opportunistic caring about it now, mostly from the right.
So what were you saying about the looting?
They're saying it's not being done by the protesters?
Well, they're saying the peaceful protesters and the looters are different.
Oh.
But it's like the entire fact that they're letting us be distracted by this and letting this division occur keeps us from having the conversation of how we got here. Because it's like, look how damaging these looters are. And it's like, well, what got 40 million people unemployed and like with nothing to do? Like the reason why the protests are growing isn't because like people, I mean, yes, they're enraged, but then it's because they also have like, they don't have work to go to tomorrow. School's out. Like there's a political system that prepared this powder keg, and George Floyd was just the one that ignited it.
The spark.
But it's like the looters aren't because of the BLM movement. The looters are because of, we saw like the lockout protests like before,
a lot
before
of them
this.
are
And so
being caught when they're being caught, looters, that they're not even the BLM protester movement.
that's what I'm saying. The
at all.
movement
They're
is
just,
much
like,
bigger than
coming
BLM.
out
It's
because they
really
they're mad.
Yeah, anyone who's been marginalized economically now has a reason to go out, basically.
Yes.
And so it's like, yes, unfortunately for the BLM movement, it's grown beyond them. But then also, the fortunate thing for them is that the volume of the protests now can't be ignored, because a lot of marginalized people can attach themselves to the movement of being marginalized.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, now there's fights, I guess, between
The military and the protesters?
No. Like they said, amongst the people.
Oh, right.
It's like they will
But
be
that's
losing.
the thing. It's like any
there's that fractioning.
that's the unfortunate thing is any division that occurs, especially amongst the
Yes, will weaken
protesters,
your forces.
is in favor of the establishment, or the people who basically got who one approved the trillions in bailout and also received the trillions in bailout. So they're
It's like,
fine.
yeah, how do they make money so fast when they have to bail out these giant corporations? And then it's like, when you've got quite literally 40 million of your own citizens that need a little help, it's like, oh, well, we don't, where do you live again? Where's your...
Yeah, so let's
I'm
talk about
lost.
let's
I don't know
talk
what's
about
going
this
on.
because I feel like the way our political apparatus is reacting towards the protests, it's framing them as the enemy.
Yes.
And-
it's like he's...
And so also the thing I appreciate about Joe Rogan and Krystal and Saagar being all together is they don't agree on a lot of these
Yeah.
things, but they can still have the discussion on what on what they each think. And so let's take a look at this clip about how the military is being engaged with the protesters.
And I think that's like that piece, understanding who and why is important to understanding what to do, right? Because if it's just what I have seen hasn't just been, in terms of looting, I don't know specifically, but I think it's very easy to say, oh, it's just this type of person. It's just that type of person. And to take out of it any of the sort of like more radical, not just smashing up stores and that kind of stuff, but like graffiti and more, defying curfews and those sorts of things. And so if you view the problem as just like violent protest, like the problem is violent protesters, we have to deal with that, then that merits one response. And that's the direction that Trump is going in, is like call in the military, which I think is fucking scary, like calling in active duty military in every city in the country, like we saw with the protesters who got, the tear gas and the rubber bullets in front of the White House who were peacefully protesting. I mean, that shit to me is scary. And frankly, the fact that Democrats and quote unquote journalists on TV have acted like the world is ending every time Trump does anything, when he does do something like invoke the Insurrection Act and say we're looking at sending the military into American cities, there is no more language of this is unprecedented, this is outrageous, this is, different than what we've seen in the past left, because they've burned that up on every single thing that Trump has ever done. They have.
Okay, so two things. One, they're treating...
Who cares if it's unprecedented? Who cares if there's no protocol? Make one!
Think about how much money they're spending to treat the protesters like the enemy. And granted, yes, there is looting.
But that system's been in place. It's already been easy. There's a button right there. They can easily just...
And
the
so,
other way to fix it means you have to plan it out, write it out,
So what Krystal's saying is like everything Trump has done before, I mean, she thinks this is the scariest thing because she's like, he's actually mobilizing the military against civilians now.
He shocked
right?
us.
And she's like, and because the mainstream media was so focused on basically like everything he was doing was like the end of the world. Now they don't have the language left or any ammunition left to describe what's happening now.
It's cried wolf.
Exactly. They cried wolf on Ukraine, on Russiagate, and
national emergencies, and
all right. Well, let's keep going.
oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Well, that's exactly the case, because I do think that this is a very different and very dangerous and volatile moment. But if you think that the protests are about the structure of a system that doesn't allow any redress for, problems that people have been peacefully protesting about for a long fucking time and not a thing has been done. If you think the protests are about, a political system that will offer you the quote unquote choice of Donald Trump, who's like the Central Park 5 dude and redlining with his daddy and denying black people housing, and Charlottesville's fine people on both sides, versus Joe Biden, who wrote the 94 crime bill, is unrepentant for it, was justifying it with Charlemagne just recently and saying Hillary's wrong to apologize for it, et cetera, who as part of this whole thing went out and said, police shouldn't be shooting people in the heart. Instead, they should shoot them in the leg, like train them to do that. Like when you look at those two choices and you go, what kind of a fucking choice is this?
Yeah, it's
Right, if you understand that as the legitimate part of the protest, then your response is going to be very different than it's just like, oh, these are bad people, these are people we should deem as terrorists, we have to crack down on them, let's call in the military. That shit ultimately never works, because look at 19 years in Afghanistan. What do we learn? Yeah, you can take the ground, you can't hold it. You can't hold a society together with an aggressive, militarized response. That's not going to work over time. So if that's your only strategy, it's like, okay, then what? Then what are you going to do? Are we going to have curfews at 1 p.m. every day? Are you going to have militaries holding down American cities every day? Because you have a significant chunk of the population that will no longer consent.
Okay, so that's really interesting because
I'm
she's
saying they're looking at us like we're children.
yeah, she says if you don't understand why people are outside and you mobilize the military against them, what next? It's like it's
There's no next.
exactly.
You fired the shots.
Well,
Bringing in the military means you believe the society has already fallen apart.
yeah. I mean,
That's why I'm like, you keep saying peaceful protest, but and then you call them an angry mob before there was
Yeah.
an angry mob, and then you shoot like
well, yeah, okay. So there is more. So
it's like you ran out of people to shoot up, and now you're coming again. Like that's why I said now. If that really happens, America's gonna recognize what other countries feel when the U.S. Army shows up in full armor, and it's
Yeah.
like, it's not a yay freedom. It's like, what the hell is happening?
yeah. Let's take a look at this.
And I think that's like that piece, understanding who and why is important to understanding what to do, right? Because if it's just what I have seen hasn't just been, in terms of looting, I don't know specifically, but I think it's very easy to say, oh, it's just this type of person, it's just that type of person. And to take out of it any of the sort of like more radical, not just smashing up stores and that kind of stuff, but like graffiti and more, defying curfews and those sorts of things. And so if you view the problem as just like violent protest, like the problem is violent protesters, we have to deal with that, then that merits one response. And that's the direction that Trump is going in, is like call in the military, which I think is fucking scary, like calling in active duty military in every city in the country, like we saw with the protesters who got, the tear gas and the rubber bullets in front of the White House who are peacefully protesting. I mean, that shit to me is scary. And frankly, the fact that Democrats and quote unquote journalists on TV have acted like the world is ending every time Trump does any.
I'm sorry, we just went over this clip. Oh man, did I? No.
Did you watch it today? I was like, am I on repeat?
No, sorry. Is it this one?
And I think that's like that piece, understanding who.
Oh, sorry. Then was it the other one? I'm so sorry, people who are here live.
And what. And I think that's like that piece, understanding.
I think this glitch happened before.
Well, that's weird because these are different file sizes. But okay, so I guess that's it against the. I wish I had. I guess maybe these are. Anyways.
Maybe one included the other one.
And I
maybe.
think that's like that percent of them were from the town.
And here's so why is
Oh, I think you're right, actually.
It's not going to work over time. So if that's your only strategy, it's like, okay, then what? Then what are you going to do? Are we going to have curfews at 1 p.m. every day?
Okay, yeah,
Are you
so
going to
here
have
we go.
militaries holding down American cities every day? Because you have a significant chunk of the population that will no longer consent.
So I think on this particular one, this is probably where we disagree the most, because and she pointed this out, which is that to me it's about the restoration of law and order. And look, I mean, this is why you saw these Joy Reid, right? I mean, these people were putting out conspiracy theories that actually. So here's what happened.
I don't know what that is.
So we'll begin with the
This is
timeline,
what, I'm sorry, it reminded me. The looters prove that the law and order stuff isn't working.
Yeah, the rule of law
It's not
only
the
works for the status
BLM
quo.
thing. The looters I feel, represent that.
But I think that's why it's easy to paint them as the enemy, because it's easy to see them as breaking the rule of law, or to paint them as breaking the rule of law. When in
they're
reality,
just saying that the rule of law is not functioning.
yes. Yeah.
So
Yeah,
Yeah.
you should work for their PR department. Let's keep going.
Timeline was, at first the Minneapolis, the Target got looted, the affordable housing complex went down. Everybody decided, okay, violence, looting, everything is fine. So they're basically justifying it on cable. Then what happened is a second night happened. A lot more violence, and police and firefighters weren't visible. So Minnesota authorities started lying about how actually every single person
About the
arrested was
COVID
out of
numbers?
state. Not true. Local news went and they found the
St. Paul
the arrest.
mayor.
The St. Paul mayor
came
said that
out
on camera.
and said every one of the people that was arrested did not have a Minnesota
Right.
address. That was a blatant fucking
Yeah,
lie.
it was a
80%
lie.
of them were from the town.
And here's so why is that? Because then they start laundering through Joy Reid at MSNBC that it's actually a bunch of Russians and white nationalists.
What?
Who are the,
Oh,
yeah,
my
I
goodness.
shit you not. You can pull
She
up her
said
Twitter
that?
thread.
Joy
And
Reid.
How is that lady still on TV?
So basically,
Who
what
is
he's
that?
saying is a Joy Reid conspiracy. I guess she's
Sorry, I
a
don't-
she's a correspondent. I don't know who she is either. They're just saying her name.
A big media, or what's
Sure,
it called?
mainstream media
Mainstream
correspondent was saying it was Russian and white nationalists when there's like no evidence for it. And so this is like the narrative that the mainstream media pushes when trying to enemize. I don't know if that's a word, but create an enemy out of the protesters.
Yeah,
But
you need
also,
something to like throw
what-
all your ammunition against, so
what
that when
Saagar-
they show up, you have none left.
What Saagar was saying before is when Minneapolis let like the Target and the other buildings burn down without any police interaction, that basically signaled to the rest of the country that this is on the table.
Yeah, so now everybody come out. That's what
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm saying. Now I feel like the looters still are representing the people who just believe that it's not a.
I know. Yeah.
But why do they fight to try to make it like it's the same thing? It's like, why can't it be a bunch of marginalized groups now really pissed? Why is it?
Yeah.
especially with their blog posts and all that
Yes.
shit. But this is
But
what
she
I want
got
to get to.
hacked.
Oh,
But
yeah.
that's the thing again. If you
Yeah.
are wrong in
Right.
the right
Yeah.
ways, then
Right.
it's okay.
But
Like
the reason I'm bringing up Reed is because the legitimacy for the use of force for these people, it only applies if
What
it's
happened to fact
Russians or
checking?
white nationalists. You're allowed to crack down on that. Whereas, so look, on the military front, let's think about our history. Eisenhower, 1957, calls in the 101st Airborne Division in order to forcibly integrate Little Rock High School to allow the Little Rock Nine to enter that school because a white supremacist violent mob and the local authorities could not be trusted to do so. I think that's a legitimate use. 1967, LBJ calls in the military to quell race riots in Detroit. I think that's legitimate. Rodney King, George H.W. Bush, calls in the Marines in order to restore order. You have to restore and crack down exactly on the people we're talking about, these criminals. A lot of them are sociopathic criminals, just taking advantage of the situation. And from that forward, we have to move and act within the political system.
You let all the crazies out.
So yeah, so there are two.
All the crazies.
There are kind of two arguments for the use of military against the protesters and for and against, which is basically the for argument is law and order needs to be restored because there are people taking advantage of the protests and looting,
Yeah.
innocent businesses,
Those
right?
are the ones that don't want the law and order restored.
And then the argument for against is like if you mobilize the military against the protesters, you're just going to make it worse.
Yeah, because now it's like you can't even tell the difference.
And that's the scary thing is Trump moved really quickly from just not, just mobilizing, just authorizing the use of the National Guard for anyone that needs it. And not even, it's like, if you need it, it's yours. Instead of like trying to understand what the differences of the protesters are, which
Yeah, I mean, I get it. It's then, I don't know, he could just do what he wants. Is that what he wants? Just to do what he wants? Which is what the Republicans want at the time, at the moment? Or
Yeah.
Whoever's donating to that, I don't even know.
Well, okay, so let me put this in here. Man, they went over a lot, but let's go over. They talk about what's wrong and their hypothesis, I guess, on how to fix it. And so let's
Who?
Krystal and Saagar and
With Joe Rogan.
yeah.
Oh, okay.
So what's wrong? Let's go over this clip first.
we covered a poll recently that was actually done by The Hill and Harris X. People said their number one political issue was corruption. Like beyond climate change or healthcare or whatever, the number one thing that they were most concerned about was political corruption. And you look at what is happening in the country right
A poll that they did. People.
now, and the fact that our institutions have no credibility, that there's no expectation that you could affect change through traditional channels, I mean, that feeds into exactly the rage that's exploding across the country. We covered before coronavirus, right? And 40 million plus Americans unemployed and 100,000 plus dead, and before riots broke out and before George Floyd was killed and before all of that, we covered this poll where 40% of Americans, I think it's 43%, said when they think of our cultural and social institutions, they just want to burn it all down. 40%. Like, what does that mean in a context of a democracy?
How did they all come to that phrase? Was it like a
That was the
they were like,
question.
do you agree with
That was the
this? They were
question.
like,
Do you
do
agree
you
with
agree with
this?
this? Right.
But on the other hand, when you
all
consider
wrote
the
it in.
fact that the largest pool of
Joe Rogan was like, how do they all come to that phrase? And they're like, oh, you pick it. Like, would you rather, or
citizens in the country aren't Trump voters or Hillary voters or Biden voters or whatever, they're
Burn it down
non-voters.
phrase.
Yeah.
And these are people who've
That's
said,
true.
like, this isn't worth it. This doesn't reflect this is not going to mean jack shit for me in my life. And if you look at that number, and then you consider what you see happening across the country, where people, again, they feel like they are so disgusted with what's going on, and they're restless and masked and like have had all of their normal tools of being numbed with infotainment and sugar and all those things and sports sort of taken away from them.
None of
You
it
start
works
to
anymore.
understand what we're seeing.
It's really a perfect storm. I mean,
Completely. We
can't
we've
numb
never
ourselves
experienced anything
anymore.
like this before, and it's fascinating to see how the thin veneer of civilization can be chipped through, and you just see the really deep pool of despair that's underneath it. There's so much madness going on in the streets today.
Yeah, I think Krystal hit it on the head when she says that basically everyone who feels like the system isn't working is out there. And it's not just people who feel like police systems aren't working, but everyone who feels like the political system isn't working, and even like their vote can't really change anything. Like this feeling that nothing works is why people are outside.
So why follow the rules?
Yeah, what do the rules do to help them?
It's like I just feel it's so, yeah, I can't disagree because it's like, look what happened just a couple months ago.
Yeah, so they talk about
vast difference, and it's like now it's not years apart. Now it's quite literally weeks ago. Like,
yeah, so they talk about how this fair system is exposed as a lie. So let's take a look at this.
They have so much money for the bailouts. They have so much money to take care of people during COVID for these corporations, so much money to deal with this. Why didn't they invest that money in fixing all these problems that have happened in these inner cities that have had a long, deep history of economic problems?
Yeah.
Like
and not just the inner
Baltimore.
cities, but that's exactly, I mean, we had this whole Democratic primary, and every debate, it was like, well, how are you going to pay for it? But then the
Right.
moment that the stock market crashed, it was like, here's $4 trillion.
Right,
Good
exactly,
luck. And so
exactly.
it just exposes, that's part of the moment that we have to understand. Is it just exposes the fact that all of this idea that we can't do anything to help you, and I'm so sorry, and there's not money, and that the system is fundamentally fair, has been completely exposed as a lie.
The system has never been fundamentally
Hal
fair,
said
but
it was
people
just
have
Disney
tried their
anyways.
best to make it as
was the
fair
decimal.
as possible while supporting the special interest group that put them into power,
Right.
while trying to keep up with the demands of their constituents. It's a mess.
Yeah, Joe Rogan saying it's not fair because the people that donated to their campaigns, like they have to keep them in mind. And so what she was saying about how the Fed just printed like 4 trillion, I think 1.5 trillion could take care of student debt in the United States. And so she's like,
decades of saying we don't have the money. We don't
yeah,
have the
so
money.
she's like, that idea that like we don't have the money is just exposed as a lie. And it's just, now the system is just exposed as a system that takes care of the people who are on top of the system.
Or the ones that like follow all the rules, which is
So Saagar has some insight on how to fix it, and I thought it was really insightful, based off of politicians and how to basically motivate them to make good political decisions.
To represent.
Yes.
One of my favorite things I talk about is what Krystal and I really want to try and do, or especially for me, is I want to make it the cynical choice in order to do the right thing. That's the hardest game in politics, because that's what the special interest did, right? Like, it's the cynical choice in order to pass the subsidy or do the bailout for X and not for Y, because you know you're going to get a job out on the other side, or you know that you're going to benefit politically. That's what we need to do. We need to make it so that it's the cynical choice to show up for working class people. And
so I think when he says cynical, maybe rewarding is a better word, or another word you can use, because he's saying the special interest groups have made it clear through lobbying that we'll take care of you financially if you vote this way or if you do these things. But what Saagar is saying is we need to make that choice available
tenure
for
you.
Yeah, we need to make that choice available for people, for politicians who want to make better choices for working class people, because that is now the best choice to make. Like that was this basic success of Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump, is because they appealed to a set of people that felt marginalized by the current system and are willing. But he's not saying Bernie Sanders in particular. He's saying any politician. Like it can be the more rewarding choice. So let's keep going.
How do we make it?
Well, yeah, he explains it.
right now, I mean, that's one of the things I really took note of, was this holiday plan I'm talking about. Cory Gardner from Colorado is the most vulnerable Republican in the United States Senate, and he signed on to that plan. Now, he's running for re-election. He was vulnerable before all of this even happened, and that's what you can try and capitalize on. You can show people, even if they're the most cynical act. I don't know anything about Cory. I don't know why he signed on. But I just want to make it clear. But like, if you can make it so that it's the cynical choice to try and show up. Now, that is an extraordinarily hard thing to do. That is, I'm not going to sit here and pretend.
Try to show up for like working class people.
Oh, but okay. I guess I'm not understanding all the terminology.
As if I don't talk about every single day about how the system is rigged, and the political system in particular, and who owns who. But this is part of what I think we're onto about what the heterodox kind of space, which is that there is an extraordinary support for efforts like this. And if you can show these politicians, if you do something like this, you will get praise from Krystal and Saagar. You will get an electoral benefit. You will have the media. This is the key, is you need to build alternative ecosystems, centers of power, which are able to elevate that so that they know that they have somebody who's going to have their back. Because right now, if you go, the standard line, you're always going to have right or the left to back you up in a time of crisis. You'll have the money, people will fundraise. So you have to show people that by doing the right thing, that's where the best politics are. And that's what we focus on in terms of the economic solutions, and so much of what we advocate for on the show is to show people, like I said, 50+1 solutions exist. There is political opportunism to be had by just doing the right thing. This was Trump. I mean, Trump's like innovation more than anything was running against standard GOP ideology in the 2016 primary. Running on trade, saying, no, maybe trade's not always a good thing. Running hard on immigration, which is something GOP voters have always wanted. Those two issues in particular went completely against Paul Ryan and so much of what they were advocating for, but you could never say it, because if you said it, not going to get on Fox.
So I think what he's saying is that you can't be an outlier and expect the establishment to have your back, and that's why a lot of politics are in establishment camps. And so his solution is, like, he's saying politics have to know that there is another establishment of power that would have their back, and that's like working class people or like shows like theirs. And so I guess that's what has to be established, is that being a working class politician would actually get you results. Like, look at Andrew Yang. He's not a politician, but he was really successful, more successful than anyone ever thought, just because he was speaking to a class of people that...
Trump is not a career politician.
Exactly.
So he doesn't even know. He's never been given those kinds of scripts before. You know what I mean? So
you would think that they would try to dissect that, but what Saagar is saying is they haven't yet, or politician, like it may be like the smaller in smaller states or counties, haven't realized that taking those stances would benefit them as well.
It's too bad we can't get Arnold Schwarzenegger to run.
If you said it, you're not going to be in leadership. The Republicans aren't going to fundraise money for you. The think tank scholars are going to write fake studies and fake papers about how you're a liar. that's exactly what he exposed, that there's opportunity to be had there. What we got to do is build up media and alternative organizations which show people that there is a way to be cynical. There's a way to, because people are cynical, politicians in particular. There is a way to act in your own self-interest and to do the right thing. And I think that's why I've looked at it as much more of I don't look at it in that nihilistic way. I look at it in a much more positive way, which is that this did happen. I mean, something broke through. And I don't think it's been perfect, but it's something which we can capitalize on and build over decades, because I think God knows, I mean, people need it right now. It's the worst economic crisis since the Great Depression.
Oh, man. Well, so yeah, I guess the way we can fix politics is if we can convince politicians that doing the right thing and
Well, I
whatever
guess
their
that's
political
what
advantages.
We need new politicians, but I think people have kind of felt afraid to get into, or they try kind of to step foot in politics, and they're just like, rah! And realize how dirty the pond was, and so it's like, well, but if you don't get new people in there, it's harder. Then all we got is these old white people. How long have they been there? Like, that's why I'm like, how sad that we could blame Bernie
There's
for
nothing
not
wrong. Yeah,
being,
Bernie's
you
an old
know,
white person. There's nothing wrong with old white people.
That's what I'm saying, but he has run out of his energy, I think, now.
Yeah.
It's like he needs to pass the baton, but like they won't let us. They all pushed for Biden. So it's like, what? No
Yeah,
wonder he
it's
just
the
says
establishment
I'm not Trump.
choice.
It's just like, okay, fine, Biden
That's-
and
that's
Trump,
literally all he has.
Now you're going to tell me still that you think I have a real choice?
Yeah. Do you want to see what Trump is actually like, or hear about what Trump is actually like from someone who's had to, I guess, interview him a few times?
Oh.
Which is Saagar. Not once,
yeah.
not twice, not thrice, but thrice. All right,
They
let's take a look.
Threw him in 3 times?
You know, I mean, see, this is the thing, though. I mean, I've met Trump. I've interviewed him a couple of times, four times, I think. And
What is he like?
exactly what you see, exactly what you see on TV.
Like, that
Same
is
guy.
what
Do you feel
get.
like you've got
you get what you see.
through the layers to talk to a human?
No, because he's always
I
on.
don't think
That's the
there's
thing.
anything else.
No, that's
You don't
the
think
thing.
there's anything
He's
in
always,
there?
you know, my favorite thing I ever asked Trump, I was like, what are people going to remember you for in 100 years? And he was like, veteran's choice. And I was like, I'm going to go out on a limb.
Veteran's
and
choice?
say, that's probably not it, right?
Jesus
I'm like sitting in
Christ.
there. I occurred with me with Trump. Like, I'm in the Oval, and like, you're like, man, that's where like Kissinger was sitting. Like, man, this JFK picture, and like Eisenhower, like this
Yeah.
stuff. I don't think he thinks about any of that.
What did he
Yeah.
mean by veteran's choice? That he
So-
was the veteran's choice?
No, that he was taking care of veterans through like a veterans
There was
healthcare
like
tour.
a healthcare
He just started
program.
rattling off like why he would, you know, like all his, basically like the talking points and like why he's great. But I realized, I'm like, Trump lives completely in the moment, and he doesn't really have that, like, he doesn't really think about things in that historical context.
Well, they say
Isn't
that
it kind of fascinating?
during the briefings, he
kinda
only pays
fascinating.
attention if his name's brought up. So they throw his name in there
Yeah.
every now and again.
Just to-
What? It's so odd.
Saagar
I
has
mean,
to do the
yeah.
same thing with
we-
me when we're getting
Yeah.
ready for the show in the morning.
He's a
Just like
I
that.
feel like we deserve him.
I want to say that again.
Yeah. She says Saagar has to do the same thing to me when we're
Go
getting
back
ready.
to what I missed what what it showed. I was only listening to the audio.
Oh, what showed?
What he was doing yeah, right before she said that.
He pays attention if his name's brought up. So they throw his name in there
Yeah.
every now and again.
Just to-
What?
Oh, so he gets
It's so odd.
Saagar
I
has
mean,
to do the
yeah.
same thing with
We-
me when we're getting
Yeah.
ready for the show in the morning.
He's a,
Just like
I
that.
feel like we deserve him.
it's like before my first joint.
I feel like we deserve him such a amazing. They can't see it in the camera though. There's like
Smoke halo spread above me.
unintentional smoke.
I've never been able to make them before. What's wrong?
No, I just want to make the mics are fine. Yeah, makes a good point. I think we deserve him. Oh man.
That might who I need to learn to be more like.
Hmm?
To live in the moment.
Be more like Trump. Oh, I know. It's like Saagar's like, I don't think he really thinks of anything in a historical context. I think he just lives day to day.
Yeah, it's like I just need to make it to tomorrow.
All
So
right.
let's make today fun.
We are coming among another 420. Can you give me a joint, please? Yes. We made it, guys.
Woo.
Give yourself a pat on the back. Get your joint ready. You can 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Happy 420, guys.
I didn't light it. I was just
It's
waiting.
about
Okay.
with it.
Yeah.
Yes. Happy 420, guys. Remember to take your. Can you? What is
Cannabis
it?
prophylaxis. All right, COVID-19 prophylaxis.
Cannabis
Cannabis.
prevents the prophylaxis of prevention. There up to 73%. It's proven by Canadian studies. So
No,
Thank
it's
you.
not proven by Canadian studies.
have observed it. It's important.
Oh
I smoke.
gosh, this is you playing telephone with yourself.
I smoke cannabis every day, and I don't have COVID-19. So just based on the anecdotal evidence
Oh my
alone,
goodness. Okay, no, I shouldn't say it. It's kind of sad news. But they said George Floyd got over COVID in April.
oh nice.
No, so he's like, dang, he survived that only to get murdered by police.
Yeah, that proves one thing is that COVID-19 affects the black community overwhelmingly more than other, I guess, non-black communities, or
Yes.
And
Well,
then,
that's with all medical healthcare. They usually have the lowest
and then this proves
survival rate.
that even with
the
that,
hospital.
the police are still more dangerous to black people.
The police are more dangerous to all people in the U.S.
But
To all those things.
but
But
statistically,
definitely, yes, way
more
more
to black people. They're like,
Black people have it bad on pretty much all fronts in America. The medical, the supposedly the criminal justice system. Like, you label them criminal before you call it, like, and then you say justice.
it's hard to be black in America. It's a fact. And so
But that's where we can find, because they have been here and they have made it and they're still not like, at least they're not like vengeful, that the history that can teach us something and show us quick resolutions. Who better than the black community thinking of these things the whole time of how they would make it better, you know? I'm like, then we could probably we put together some of those, plans and those those things in these cities and these counties that are like really wanting to repair their communities after, because the fires are all going to go out at the end of the day. Those cities are still going to be there.
all right. Well, so I tried to. I mean, yes, I
How are
agree.
we going to rebuild? It's about rebuilding. Let's make plans to rebuild right now.
I'm just kind of waiting because I think things are going to get worse before we can start rebuilding.
That's fine.
Yeah. Well,
If you could start all over, what would you do?
so do you know who was part of the
How would you
looting?
make it good? Who?
Jake
a lot
Paul.
of these guys. I'm like, you all are getting caught.
So
See,
Jake, yeah,
They just want to. Oh.
Jake Paul has been charged with looting or something. Let's take a look. Let's take a look at the video clip. I
Call
think
out the bad cops and call out the bad looters. They're all if they get caught.
he lives in Arizona, so very close to California.
I'm just kidding. Is this like
YouTuber
doxing?
Jake Paul has been charged after weekend looting and riots in Scottsdale. Crowds gathered near Scottsdale Fashion Square and broke into the mall and other stores Saturday. So last weekend.
He's gonna be like, no, it was a black dude. I
One
swear."
assault and millions of dollars in damage were reported.
Neiman Marcus.
Numerous
I thought they
people
went-
were arrested during the unprecedented event and booked into jail on varying charges. Police say they reviewed hundreds of tips saying YouTuber Jake Paul was at the scene. Paul was present after the protest was declared an unlawful assembly. Rioters were ordered to leave. Jake Paul tweeted saying he was not engaged in any looting or vandalism. He says they were there to film and share our experience.
He thinks he's the only one with a camera?
Paul has been charged with criminal trespassing and unlawful assembly, both misdemeanor charges. Oh, he's white, so he's fine. Paul has 20 million subscribers on
he's
YouTube.
rich.
Yes, he's rich. Bitch. Yeah, you don't need to be protesting, Paul. You can work from home. So you want to see his he has a response to it. So let's take a look at his response.
I'm like, did we see him?
Let's take a look.
I wanted to use my platform and film what was going on and what is going on in our country as we speak to be able to share and spread the message to the world and raise awareness that we shouldn't just be standing there doing nothing. So when we heard that there was protests that were going to be taking place in Arizona, we wanted to be involved and show our support. The story of what happened is actually pretty simple, and it was twisted and exploited by the media to be something that it wasn't. Right around 10 p.m. when the protests were supposed to be starting, we followed people to where everyone said that the protests were happening. As we started to walk down the street, we were blown away by what we were starting to see. The first thing I saw was when I looked to the right and saw that the side of a mall window had been completely shattered. Then as we kept on going, we noticed that all of the buildings in the whole entire area, the glass was completely shattered. Quite frankly, I was in shock and didn't know what to make of the situation. But we kept on walking because we still hadn't seen where people were protesting and we still wanted to be involved. We got to a street that seemed to be the center of where everything was going on. And that's when I saw probably 80 cops standing shoulder to shoulder, just like looking out into the crowd. As I was approaching, more people were gathering the protest, and about 200 yards down the street from me was an Apple store that was getting completely ransacked. I saw dozens of people breaking down the glass, running into the store, grabbing whatever they could, and leaving. The battalion of cops was in between me and the Apple store. And as I started to walk down the street more, all of a sudden out of nowhere I hear a boom! And see this thing flying in the air at my feet. It lands 2 feet away from me, explodes, and like this big gas cloud comes, hits me in the side of the face. I start choking, coughing, running backwards, and was completely in shock at what the fuck had just happened. Here I am, just a person walking down the street, and all of a sudden I'm getting tear gas shot at me. This is when I got pissed the fuck off. This must just be a small fraction of what people are facing on a day-to-day basis with police. As I started to retreat, there was 3 more canisters of tear gas shot at me and the group of people around us. At that point in time, not only was I pissed, not only was I in shock, and not able to really see because my eyes were fucked up, but I just didn't know what the fuck to do, and I was documenting the whole entire thing. At that point in time, some of the strangers around us got pissed off as well and started throwing rocks and started throwing the tear gas back at the cops. Adrenaline still pumping, not knowing what the fuck is going on, I remove myself from that situation and go across the street. This is where I find about 15 people breaking down the front of a P.F. Chang's store. And this is one of the most absurd things I have ever seen in my fucking life. Some kid came up to me and asked me if I needed a first aid kit and offered me milk to pour into my eyes to help with the tear gas. Another girl's breaking down the front of the store. People are inside of it, trashing it, stealing stuff from the inside. Meanwhile, throughout this chaos, half of the group that we were with got separated and we were trying to locate them and find them. During all this confusion, chaos, sensory overload, sirens, things exploding, someone comes up to me while I'm filming, just hands me something. I didn't even know what it was at the time, to later find out that someone handed me a bottle of vodka for what reason, I don't know. Seconds later, I set the bottle on the ground, still not even knowing what it is, and I continue to document what the fuck was going on. At that point in time, we decided to remove ourselves from the chaos and make our way back towards our car to go home. However, the police had dozens and dozens of officers on each street corner, blocking off certain streets and not allowing people to go down certain areas. After about a half a mile of walking, we see another battalion of cops and decide to go right, away from them and towards the mall. As we approach the mall, I see one of the most absurd things I've ever seen in my life. Hundreds of people running in and outside of the mall with bags, stealing everything inside of the mall. In hindsight, everything's 2020 and we shouldn't have been anywhere near what was going on and we should have removed ourselves from the situation.
Oh my god. Okay, so this is the issue I have with this. If he was like tear gassed 3 times and he said he was like in shock and traumatized,
And he couldn't see and didn't know where he was going.
and didn't know what to do, and then he sees like a P.F. Chang's being ransacked, and then he has like apparently like
he said they were trying to get milk
right
for their eyes.
right, and then it's like.
And then it turned into everything.
And then it's like, you don't know what to do. You go inside the mall.
Well, yeah, I was like, well, he didn't want to sit in his car. And I'm like, but didn't you want to be
No, he's
safe?
saying I think he was blocked off from his car because like there are cops in the way. But I'm pretty sure if you're telling the cops you're going to your car because, you know, you don't want to be a part of the looting that you just put yourself even closer to. It's like, good thing you were charged because I don't really believe your story. Like, you can easily go to your car. What are the cops going to do if you're not doing anything? You know what I mean? You're white.
Yeah, I don't know.
You're not the George Floyd color. Come on. All right, we got 26 left in his whatever the story is.
But in the heat of the moment, I wanted to document what was going on and witness it for myself. And that's where I made the poor decision to go inside of the mall. And at the time, my mindset was that I wanted to document this experience because I've never seen anything like it in my life. And I don't know if anything will ever happen like this again in our lifetime.
I'm just here to document it. I'm not doing nothing.
First of all, the vandalism and looting isn't helping spread the proper message. It's making the whole entire situation worse because it creates this loop and effect of more hatred and more crime.
Wow. Thank you for your insight, Jake Paul. So to be fair, I don't really know much about Jake Paul.
I just know he was a YouTuber.
He still is a YouTuber.
Was
But-
he the one? I think he just has a hard time knowing, like, he'd be one of those that is trying to be himself but can't follow the script. So he gets in trouble because he finds himself filming things that people might find inappropriate.
Right. So those two clips weren't really supposed to be the clips that we enjoy. This clip is actually supposed to be the clip we enjoy. So I don't know much about Jake Paul, but PewDiePie does. And so PewDiePie does a good job kind of explaining.
I need to let people know. I only started watching YouTube after we started making videos for it.
I know. So very recently, yeah. You don't know a
so
lot
I'm
of
like,
YouTubers.
people might think I'm stupid, but I'm like, I really just didn't watch YouTube.
Yeah. And so you want to see how PewDiePie thinks about Jake Paul and his other. I think he tries to like rip off people too. Let's take a look at. And you know what? To be honest, I think PewDiePie just hates Jake Paul because he looks so much like him. Like he's like American PewDiePie. You know what I mean? But then
They don't look alike. You thought those two looked alike?
I think a lot of people can compare them because they're like both white, famous YouTubers. All right, let's keep going.
They don't even look like they're from the same.
Yeah.
Well, they're not from the same country.
Well, let's take a look.
You know, when I was on break, it gave me some insight of what's really important.
They don't even have the
It gave
same
me some
color hair.
ideas around what I really want to focus on in the future. And it made me ask, what is Jake Paul doing? What is Jake Paul doing right now? Huh? What is he up to, that little snake? Little Jakey Jake. Has he finally gone fully bald yet? These are the questions I've been thinking about. What do we got? YouTuber Jake Paul launches entrepreneur how-to platform, financial freedom movement. Yes, Jake Paul is the person I look at when I envision financial freedom. Okay, let's see. Let's dig into this. This is interesting to me.
They say we're entitled and lazy.
Who is they, Jake? Huh?
They tell us to go to college, get a job, retire at 65. How's that working out for us?
How's that working out for us? So smug. You're not 65, Jake.
Yeah, but how old are
You can become financially free by paying me money. All right, trust me. You don't understand. It starts.
They look alike?
Yeah, I think it's.
I feel one of them's
I think if you-
looking and the other one's not.
If people mistake Matt Damon and Mark Wahlberg, it's easy to think, oh my God, look how expensive this is. $39. I think that's a month.
Oh.
Or you can, oh yeah, monthly access. 39
Holy
bucks.
bejesus.
Yearly access, 480
It sounds
bucks.
like the BitConnect
Oh yeah.
scheme.
Trust me. You don't understand. It starts by paying me money. Ignore all this endless content on YouTube with actual legitimate people talking about financial advice that actually has some legitimacy and trustworthy and weight to them. But no, really what we need to do is we need to pay Jake Paul.
Are your parents happy? Are they living the life they wanted? There's over $1 trillion in student loan debt and people with outdated education who can't even get a job for the student loans they took out. Maybe we're too young to have experienced this yet, but if you're not, then you know exactly what I'm talking about.
I don't.
I've had enough of it. Our generation is better than this. We deserve better. We're smarter. So what's the solution?
Okay, what
We
is
need
it,
to
Jake?
create a movement for our generation, one that inspires people to take action to achieve their dreams.
This is not a product. This is a movement. Oh, it's literally in the name. I didn't even realize.
Now that
I think he shaved his eyebrows that way. But, you know, honestly, if people mistake Matt Damon and Mark Wahlberg, you can mistake PewDiePie and Jake
Their
Paul.
nose structure isn't the same.
No,
Their
but they
cheek
both-
structures, their eye color, their hair color is not the same.
They're both white with beards.
Their
and hair.
accent's not the same. Even their skin.
I'm just
tone.
saying, he's American PewDiePie.
Paley, pale. You know he's from like Northern.
He looks more like PewDiePie than Joe Rogan or Saagar or Krystal, you know, or Jimmy Dora. Who are the other YouTubers, you know? He looks more
So
like
you
him
just
than.
mix white people.
No, I'm just saying. I think PewDiePie roasts him harder because he's like the American version of him.
Yeah, like he hates being. I would hate if I looked like PewDiePie to get confused, or if I looked like either of them to get confused.
No, if someone
guess-
kind of looked like you, but they were like a grosser version or something. All right, let's keep
I'd
going.
be like, yes,
Yeah.
now I'm the better one.
Yeah, and you're more successful. He's like 5 times bigger channel subscribers alone.
Have for us or
this
our
one?
society. We need a movement that inspires people to live life on their terms, not someone else's. A movement that anyone who's
Hey,
courageous
rich
enough to follow
cards,
can have a much higher
expensive.
chance of becoming financially
Yeah,
free
why-
from the societal cookie
That's not
cutter
gonna
9
give
to
me
5
financial
jobs we
freedom.
are all told to have. Our future is in our hands. Are you with me?
I'm okay. Thank you, though. What the hell was that? Did you guys
Somebody's
catch
asking
that?
what
you
he
with me?
means by financial freedom.
What the hell?
Are you with me?
Are you with me?
Don't do that. Yeah, that's fine. I can't watch a non-creepy
No,
guy
definitely
be
not
creepy.
now.
It's like,
Why did he do that? This
don't
channel has
make him do
72
that.
subscribers. Wow, this is really taking.
He has
off.
dry lips, even more.
I like how they're supposed to be experts on marketing and all these things. They don't even link what the website is in any of the videos. We'll teach you all the tricks. We'll teach you all. Don't link the website. What kind of marketing is this? All right, I'll just Google financial
Call it
freedom
out,
movement.
Pewdiepie.
That'll
Hey,
do
you
it,
know
right?
them.
Okay.
He's,
So it
he's
took
gonna give
while,
him a chance. He's gonna actually look at the website
on the
and
website.
like
He called
Your
out
terms,
Nick. He
dream
called out
goals,
these scams.
financial freedom. Oh wow, look at that. Walt Disney is in on this. Do you really think they are? What,
Yeah, you
what
think
have they
any of
done
those
for
companies
this?
are actually
They
on it?
always add these. Like, what do
He
they
just
mean?
Got the logo.
They don't mean anything. Cutting edge mentorship, coaching, and training.
can get in trouble
Who
for
are
that.
these people? What is wrong with that guy's face? You get his personal rituals.
Secret.
He has rituals and secret formula. Live weekly video coach.
his secret formula is be white and charismatic.
Calls. Wow, can't wait to join on those. Oh, okay, so there's more to be named soon. That's why. There's more people coming in on this. Oh my god, it's sale. It's not 40 pounds per
sale.
month. Oh wow, that's so generous. Do not charge 40 pounds. 4 times of Netflix. Nah, it's just half. Don't worry, guys. Click here to enroll now. Absolutely. I'm sold. Who is this for? His followers. Who wants to become financially free. His 8-year-olds, his fellow 8-year-olds who's just struggling, grinding out there. They just want to reach that financial freedom, man. Come on. The Freedom Fam! We're a family! Top prize is I'll fly you out to film a vlog with me, and I'll share it to my millions of followers. I wonder if he'll actually follow up on any of this. Because the thing is, Jake's already done a similar scheme. What was it called? It was called Edfluence. It was the exact same thing where he said, you want to become big social media star like me? I'm big social media star. You need to pay me. All right. The last thing they posted was in November 2018. 50% sale! 50% sale! And the best part about this is the site is down. Like, you can't even reach it anymore. Man, if you go to join now on Financial Freedom, it seems like a bad idea to pay the 150 up front, you know, just in case he decides to remove the whole fucking website.
Gosh, 150 for a year? I mean, that's with the sale, but I mean, wait, what did you get? Oh, wait.
It's not our fault. They need to redo our education. Like kids can understand if they can understand math and algebra. If they can understand like finances and basic accounting, budgeting. The problem here and what this other dude, Jake Paul, is taking advantage of is that lack of information.
I know. I honestly wonder how many people are on this.
Like, what an ass.
$20 a month? Okay.
Why do we have to?
I mean, like, yeah.
We don't need to pass so many laws against this kind of shit. We just need to educate our children younger and be like, what the hell is this?
Yeah.
Get out
Which
my
he
face.
definitely will. When they launch this thing, they had this whole event. It's going to be massive, right? Everyone's going to want to come to this financial freedom movement thing. I mean, it looks, from the looks of engagement and all that, it looks like luckily not many people are buying into this. And then you can look at the launch, which is great. So here it is. It's going to be all over it. It's going to be a whole line. It's going to be TanaCon 3.0. And here's the reality.
US politics.
A bunch of kids, about what? A dozen maybe? I don't know how much that is. And I think this is for the people that bought the merch or something like that.
Also, we ain't playing games right now. Our boys are strapped.
There's more cops there than actual people visiting.
Oh my gosh, they're like throwing money in the air.
What does it say? Ideas are without execution. I thought it was going to say education.
They really came for
That
the
looked
money.
like a lot of fun. Who wouldn't want to pay to go there? What's he saying? I don't know what's going on. Great. What a great event. Well, I thought this was about financial freedom, Jake.
This is something I'm like really passionate about. That's why
He's very passionate.
creating a financial freedom movement is super important to me because I really just like don't agree with the education system and how we're wasting time in schools. Like I was a kid in school, I was like, why am I here? Why am I doing this today? And I wanted to apply myself. I wanted to make shit happen, but I didn't know what to do.
Jake Paul is complaining about how in school he didn't know why he was there.
But no, we gathered like some amazing people, amazing experts, smart people in
We have some amazing experts.
to put together a movement for young people to be able to be a part of and to be able to chase their dreams and actually learn, you know.
And actually learn! And actually learn!
More out of everything, and that's why I created this movement because it's
That's
time
why.
to, like, stop
No other reason.
like letting
Lenny's Pizza.
the U.S. government and everyone like just allow us to sit in schools and not actually learn anything. And so I want to give you guys tips, tools, advice.
Get ready to quit school and just pay $20 a month because that's all you really need. There's some amazing quotes from this interview that Jake did with Variety as well, where he was saying, I was like, why are we sitting in class right now learning the quadratic formula when we should be learning about taxes and insurance? Teacher, please! I need to learn about taxes and insurance right now! You think he said like that? Where's my taxes? Huh? Enough with this quadratic formula. I need financial
He
freedom.
already knows
How am I
that.
supposed
Yeah, he is taking advantage of it. He even identified the problem, and he's taking advantage of it.
Yeah, of course. He's already tried one time before. He's doing it
He
again.
just like
He
showed his own play. Like, what? You an idiot.
get it? Jake Paul is a reason why no one likes YouTubers. It's just like, well, I'm probably guilty as well. Never mind. And then he says that he dropped out of school at 11th grade, completing the diploma through an online course. I just got the answer from a cheat site and put it in and didn't have to do any work. Wow, you're so epically smart, Jake. I bet you were probably the smartest kid in the class, weren't you? Oh, wait, you say you are. Oh, this tweet talking about this. Our education system is worthless. Worthless! I'm fed up. I don't know how to capitalize. Maybe you enter school, you learn how to write. Jesus Christ, this is a mess. If you're confused at what the event is tomorrow, basically, I'm sick of our education system and how it's teaching kids zero real-life skills for them to secure their own...
Oh, man.
Oh my gosh.
And PewDiePie isn't
Stay in
even...
school, kids. Stay in school.
PewDiePie isn't even... His first language probably isn't English. The
But we
fact
do
that
need to supplement with like financial whatever. But stay in school, yeah. PewDiePie
his first language is English, and the fact that he can point out that there
is
is pretty
also
embarrassing.
in a country where education is universally
Yeah, this guy, he decided
a
to...
universal.
Jake Paul
right or
decided to
whatever.
drop out at 11th grade and then swindle a bunch of kids, apparently.
own future.
The American way.
This is embarrassssing. I'm creating a movement for
You're not even
everyone who wants to
American. Why are
take
you
life into their own
embarrassed for
hands
us?
and learn real life skills from actual
Oh, as a
professionals.
YouTuber.
Why are kids sitting in
He's embarrassed
film
as a
class, film, learning from a teacher who has never even made a film? These dumbasses. And that's just one example. He has many more. Don't worry, guys. That's just one example. There's no need to refute it because he's got a whole backlog of ideas and arguments. Here it is. I was the kid in class. I like how he capitalized all of a sudden. Who was the smartest? Don't! But couldn't apply myself because I thought it was so stupid to be sitting there. I thought it was so stupid to be sitting there. It's all we are taught. Where are my taxes? Where's my insurance classes? It's so disingenuous to put forth like this is what you're passionate about, when in reality the only thing Jake Paul has shown himself to be passionate about is making money.
That's why he wants to learn about insurance and taxes. The best way to make money.
Well, yeah, and so
Fastest way.
I believe him when he said he
Either
wasn't...
collect taxes or be an insurance company.
Yeah, I believe him when he said he wasn't out looting because why would he? Yeah, he doesn't have to steal anything. But then you're exploiting the fact that looting is happening.
But that's the thing. He's just the type of person who will take an opportunity for what it is, an opportunity.
Right. And so him exploiting the looting is really no different than him exploiting like the dead bodies in like the suicide forest. Like he knew.
Oh, was that him?
Yeah, same guy.
I knew some kid who,
he knew what he was doing.
But people have seen documentaries on that. Why were they so shocked about a YouTuber?
No, I know, and it's fine. It's just like he's just a YouTuber exploiting like things for views,
or whatever.
Right?
Yeah.
And it's like the
He knows
riot
how
is the same
American
thing.
media works.
And except
Get
this
them
time he's getting
views.
charges against him, which is great. That's a good precedent for all YouTubers is that you're not big
Above the
enough
law.
to be above the law.
You're not the police.
All right. Well, that's it for our show today. I had a lot of fun. I hope you guys did too.
Yes.
Thank you, everyone who tuned in today. We'll see you tomorrow. Remember, smoke your coronavirus prevention.
Yes. Stay safe.
Yes.
Ooh.
Stay safe, especially if you're in America.
Hey, let's keep moving forward with our
Or wherever you are.
protests.
Remember, be nice to people. If you're outside protesting, just be nice, whatever side.
Unless
you're
someone's
on.
trying to mess with, we saw people who were trying to instigate big fights. Stop
Yes.
those. Yeah, look around, stand up, do the right thing.
Yeah,
say the right
maybe be
thing.
wholesome. I think that's a part of being wholesome.
Yes.
Special thanks to Cure.
I know. I wonder if
We appreciate you for
I'm always
tuning in.
curious what outsiders think of Americans right now or what's going on because it's hard to tell when you're in it, right?
Yeah, it must look nuts.
It's like, ooh, okay, but
All right. Cheers.
Stay safe.
Special thanks to Cure. We always love it when you tune in. We'll see you guys tomorrow. Remember, if you guys don't have buds, wear your buds.
bye.
See you tomorrow.